What if I told you there's a D&D build that is genuinely the most powerful thing at the table for about 6 hours a day? Today we're building Escanor from the 7 Deadly Sins. Divine Sunshine, a sacred axe the size of a small horse, and a turn-by-turn power curve that peaks so hard your DM is going to start asking, who decided this was okay? I also had to figure out how to make you weaker at night, and that's definitely going to lean a little into the role-playing, but it was still fun to play with. Let's go ahead and dive in, starting with the species. Escanor is a human, so we're going to keep it that way. We're going to get the skill, performance, because he's a bit cocky, he is the lion's sin of pride, and humans get a feature called versatile, so you get an origin feat right away. Now, there's an additional add-on book in D&D called Lorwyn First Light. This is a very small add-on that I managed to purchase just for this occasion, because it gives you the origin feat, Child of the Sun. And since Escanor's powers come directly from whether or not the sun's out, he is literally the epitome of the phrase, sun's out, guns out, Child of the Sun kinda felt unavoidable. This gives you 2 features. The first is Eyes of Erdu, so you and allies within 10 feet of you have advantage on saving throws made to avoid or end the blinded condition. Then you also get Fairy Fire, so you learn the Fairy Fire spell using any modifier that you want, and you can cast it once without a spell slot. You regain the ability to cast it again when you finish a long rest, so using this just once per day during the day kinda makes sense. But you can also cast this spell with any spell slot you might have. Then for a background, I went with Aberrant Air. This gives you skill proficiencies in History and Intimidation, but it also gives you the Aberrant Dragon Mark feat. This is going to give you a few features that I felt like Escanor kinda needed. The first is Aberrant Fortitude. So when you fail a Constitution saving throw, you can take a reaction to roll a d4 and add that to whatever you rolled, potentially turning your failure into a success, but you can only do this once per long rest. Again, something you only do during the day. Then you get Aberrant Magic, so you know 1 cantrip of your choice from the Sorcerer spell list and 1 first level spell. But your Constitution is your spellcasting modifier for it. You can cast the leveled spell once per short or long rest without a spell slot, but you can also just as easily use a actual spell slot for it. Then finally, you get Aberrant Surge. So when you cast the level 1 spell from this feat, you can expend 1 of your hit point dice and roll it. If you roll an even number, you gain temp HP equal to the number you rolled. If you roll an odd number, 1 creature within 30 feet of you, not including you, takes force damage equal to the number rolled. If no other creatures are in range, you unfortunately take the damage. So for the cantrip related to this feat, we're going to go with Sorcerer's Burst because it's one of the most powerful cantrips you can get as far as base damage. And then for a first level spell, we're going to go with Spellfire Flare. Both of these lean into your powers relating to the sun and being able to essentially light up a fireball, but we don't want an actual fireball for this build. Then before we dive into the class, we're going to be doing a lot of spells here, and I already grabbed something from an additional book that's outside the core rulebook. So if you want to make sure you have access to everything, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the comments and description down below. I have all of my character sheets there for every build. Now, because Escanor is the lion's sin of pride, we need to be leaning into both charisma and strength. The best way to do that is by choosing a Paladin. When you become a Paladin, you get proficiency with all weapons, all armor, and you get to choose 2 skills. We're going to go with Athletics and Persuasion. First level of Paladin also gives you Lay on Hands, so you have a pool of healing that replenishes when you finish a long rest, aka once per day. Just remember to keep using all of your stuff during the daylight and just recover during the night. So with this pool of healing, you can restore a number of hit points equal to 5 times your Paladin level. As a bonus action, you can touch a creature, which can just be you, and draw power from this pool of healing to restore a number of hit points to the creature, up to the maximum amount in the pool. You can also expend 5 hit points from the pool of healing to remove the poisoned condition from the creature. But then you don't do any actual healing with it, you just remove the poison condition. First level of Paladin also gives you a weapon mastery, so we're gonna choose the Great Axe. It's kind of his iconic thing. This gives you the weapon mastery feature, Cleave. So if you hit a creature with a melee attack using your Great Axe, you can make a melee attack roll with the Great Axe against a second creature within 5 feet of the first. On a hit, the second creature takes the Great Axe damage, but don't add your ability modifier to that damage unless the modifier is negative. You can make this extra attack only once per turn. Then, at first level, you also get some spell casting. Now, we're going to be leaning very heavily into radiant and fire damage whenever possible. But we also want a significant amount of buffs. You're going to want to roleplay this by stacking buffs as you get closer to the middle of the day, but removing buffs as it gets more and more towards nighttime. So as far as just some general first level buffs, grab Divine Favor, which gives you an extra 1d4 radiant damage on every hit, and it doesn't require concentration. Then also grab Shield of Faith. This is a concentration spell, but it'll boost your armor class by +2. Then also grab Heroism. This is a spell that will give you temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting modifier at the start of each of your turns, while also giving you immunity to the Frightened condition. Then you want some one-off damaging spells, like Divine Smite, which allows you to smash down on your target pretty darn hard with an extra 2d8 radiant damage from an attack, but you can boost that by an extra 1d8 if the target is a fiend or undead. And we're going to go with Searing Smite. This does fire damage, boosting up a melee attack by 1d6 fire damage, and that it can set them on fire, continuing to deal 1d6 fire damage until they succeed on a con saving throw. Then at second level of Paladin, you get to choose a fighting style. But instead of choosing the normal fighting style, we're going to choose the other feature that's available to Paladins, called Blessed Warrior. This allows you to learn 2 cleric cantrips and count them as Paladin cantrips. And again, we're leaning into radiant and fire damage here. So we're going to choose Sacred Flame, which is a single target radiant damage cantrip, and Word of Radiance. Considering you're going to be in melee range most of the time, Word of Radiance is very useful. If you come up against a lot of creatures swarming you at once, Word of Radiance will hit everything within 5 feet of you with some radiant damage. Then at second level, you also get Paladin Smite, so you don't have to have the Divine Smite spell prepared, it's just automatically prepared now. And on top of that, you can actually cast it without expending a spell slot. But you must finish a long rest before you can cast it this way again. Then at third level of Paladin, you get Channel Divinity. You can use Channel Divinity twice per long rest, or recover 1 use on a short rest, but that does go up to 3 uses in total at level 11 of Paladin, maxing out there. You can use it for Divine Sense. So as a bonus action, you can open up your awareness to detect celestial fiends or undead, but you can also use Channel Divinity for something else, because at third level, you get to choose a Paladin subclass. And since you are the Lion's Sin of Pride, and pride is really about your glory, we're going to choose the Oath of Glory Paladin. This gives you the feature Inspiring Smite. So immediately after you cast Divine Smite, you can expend 1 use of your Channel Divinity and distribute temp HP to creatures of your choice within 30 feet of yourself, which can include you. The total temp HP equals 2d8 plus your Paladin level, divided amongst the creatures that you choose however you like. But since you're more about yourself, we're just going to give you most of that temp HP. Also, thanks to choosing the Oath of Glory, you get some Oath of Glory spells. These are spells that are added to your spell list, and you never have to worry about having them prepared again. And since you're only level 3 and Paladins are half casters, you get 2 spells, both of which fit our general theme. You get Heroism, which is something that you kind of wanted anyways. It just means we don't have to worry about it being prepared anymore. And Guiding Bolt, which is another radiant damage spell, which will also give you advantage after you hit a creature with it. Then lastly, at third level, you get Peerless Athlete. So as a bonus action, you can expend 1 of your Channel Divinity to give you advantage on athletics and acrobatics checks for 1 hour. And the distance of your long and high jumps is increased by 10 feet. Then at 4th level of Paladin, you get an ability score improvement. So here is our starting ability scores. We're min-maxing the hell out of this. And we're going to choose a feat and go with Great Weapon Master. This allows us to boost our strength by 1 point. Then Great Weapon Master gives us the feature Heavy Weapon Mastery. So when you hit a creature with a weapon that has the heavy property as part of the attack action on your turn, you can cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target. The damage equals your proficiency bonus. And then on top of that, you get the feature Hew. So immediately after you score a critical hit with a melee weapon or reduce a creature to 0 hit points with 1, you can make 1 attack with the same weapon as a bonus action. Then at 5th level of Paladin, you get extra attack. So now you can attack twice instead of just once whenever you take the attack action on your turn. And you get the feature Faithful Steed. So you can call on the aid of an otherworldly steed. You always have the Find Steed spell prepared, and you can cast it once without expending a spell slot, regaining this use when you finish a long rest. Also, finally, at 5th level, you get access to 2nd level Paladin spells. So thanks to being an Oath of Glory, you automatically get Enhance Ability and Magic Weapon. both of which you want to wait till daylight to start using. But Magic Weapon is great because it gives you a +1 bonus to your attack and damage rolls, and considering your axe was pretty magical, this is going to be helpful. And it's a non-concentration spell, which is also great to have. The bonus increases to a +2 when you use a spell slot of 3rd through 5th level. Then, leaning into the radiant and fire damage, we're going to go with Shining Smite. This is going to do an extra 2d6 radiant damage when you hit with a melee attack, but it also makes the target glow with a bright light in a 5-foot radius, and attack rolls against that creature have advantage. And just to add to everything else, that creature can't become invisible. 6th level of Paladin gives you Aura of Protection. So you have an aura that emanates 10 feet from you, and you and your allies in the aura gain a bonus to your saving throws equal to your charisma modifier. 7th level of being an Oath of Glory Paladin gives you Aura of Alacrity, so your speed is increased by 10 feet, and any ally within your aura also gets that speed boost. 8th level of Paladin gives you another ability score improvement, so go ahead and throw 2 points into Strength, and then 9th level gives you Abjure Foes. So as a magic action, you can expend one of your uses of Channel Divinity to overwhelm foes with awe, forcing creatures within 60 feet of you to make a Wisdom saving throw, or they're frightened for 1 minute, or until they take some damage. When they're frightened in this way, they can only do one thing on their turn. Either move, take an action, or a bonus action, but not multiples. Also at 9th level, you get access to 3rd level spells. Thanks to the Oath of Glory, you get Haste, which is an awesome buffing spell that you want to use right at high noon. And it's super good because it can also add a level of exhaustion after the buff ends, meaning that you can lean into that being more when the sun goes down. Haste is going to give you a bonus to your armor class. It's going to give you an entire extra action to use on your turn, which you can use for one attack or for any other thing you use an action for. It doubles your movement speed, and it gives you advantage on dex saves. It's a pretty solid buff. Then you also get protection from energy thanks to your Oath of Glory spells. But as far as spells you can actually choose, there's actually 4 very solid ones. First is Blinding Smite. This does 3d8 radiant damage, and it inflicts the blinded condition as this giant flash of light blinds your enemies. To empower your own weapon with some fire damage, grab Elemental Weapon. This is going to give your weapon a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls, and it deals an extra 1d4 elemental damage. We'll just choose fire most of the time. Then also grab Spirit Shroud. This is a constant buff, buffing your damage by an extra 1d8 radiant, necrotic, or cold. Will lean into the radiant, and any creature that starts their turn within 10 feet of you has its speed reduced by 10 feet. Upcasting this spell at a 4th level will boost it by an extra 1d8. But one last buffing spell I would definitely grab is Crusader's Mantle. This is a concentration spell that creates a magical aura within 30 feet of you. While in the aura, you and your allies each deal an extra 1d4 radiant damage when hitting with a weapon or unarmed strike. This is great for buffing the whole party in case you're more leaning into total damage and not just your own damage. Although it might be reasonable to not cast this very much, considering you are about pride, which is more a you thing than a party thing. 10th level of Paladin gives you Aura of Courage, so you and your allies have immunity to the frightened condition while in your aura, and if a frightened ally enters your aura, that condition has no effect on that ally while they're there. 11th level of Paladin gives you Radiant Strikes, so now your strikes carry supernatural power. When you hit a target with an attack roll using a melee weapon or an unarmed strike, they take an extra 1d8 radiant damage all the time. 12th level of Paladin gives you another ability score improvement, so we're going to throw 1 point into Constitution and 1 point into Charisma. 13th level gives us access to 4th level spells, so when it comes to the Oath of Glory, this is going to give us Compulsion and Freedom of Movement. But there's only one spell we actually want to choose, and it's kind of perfect because it only lasts 8 hours. So if you cast this closer to when the sun is really starting to become a bit more present in the sky, this can last during the core hours of sunlight, because you're going to want to choose Death Ward. This basically makes you unkillable one time. So when you drop to 0 hit points, you instead drop to 1 hit point, and then the spell ends. Then 14th level of Paladin gives you Restoring Touch. So when you use Lay on Hands on a creature, you can also remove one condition, either blinded, charmed, deafened, frightened, paralyzed, or stunned, but you have to expend 5 hit points from the healing pool of your Lay on Hands. And this, again, won't recover any hit points when you do it this way. 15th level of being an Oath of Glory Paladin gives you Glorious Defense, so you can turn defense into a sudden strike. When you or another creature you can see within 10 feet of you is hit by an attack roll, you can take a reaction to grant bonus armor class to the target, potentially turning it into a miss. The bonus equals your charisma modifier, and if the attack winds up missing because of this, you can make one attack with a weapon against the attacker as part of this reaction, if the attacker is within your weapon's range. But you can only use this feature a number of times equal to your charisma modifier, regaining all uses on a long rest. 16th level of Paladin gives you another ability score improvement, so go ahead and throw 2 points into charisma. And 17th level, it's going to give us access to 5th level spells. Our Oath of Glory spells are going to be Legend Lore and Yolanda's Regal Presence. Yolanda's Regal Presence seems fitting for having so much pride. You just have a presence that nobody can really ignore. Then when it comes to spells you can actually choose, boost up that axe with Holy Weapon. So you imbue your weapon with holy power. Until the spell ends, it emits a bright light and deals an extra 2d8 radiant damage on a hit. You can wind up ending this spell as a bonus action, and when you do so, you can deal 4d8 radiant damage and blind enemies at the same time. Then you want a big ball of sun-powered destruction. So grab Destructive Wave. This deals 5d6 thunder damage and 5d6 radiant or necrotic damage. We'll lean into that radiant again, and it does it in a 30-foot emanation from you. And speaking of emanations, at 18th level of Paladin, you get Aura Expansion. So your Aura of Protection is now 30 feet. And then at 19th level of Paladin, you get to choose an Epic Boon, because you get an ability score improvement, but if you're at least 19th level, it can automatically be an Epic Boon. So we're going to choose the Boon of the Bright Sun, leaning into all of our sun-powered stuff. This can boost our charisma by 1 more point. Maxing it out finally. But it also gives us Daylight Presence. So as a bonus action, you radiate 30 feet of bright light. And if somebody happened to try and cast darkness around you, it's immediately dispelled. But the most powerful part of this feat is that you get Fortifying Light. So while your Daylight Presence is active, at the start of each of your turns, you and allies you can see in your Daylight Presence gain 10 temp HP every single turn. Just make sure to use this ability when the sun is highest in the sky. That way it really makes sense for the character. And then finally, you can really boost up that pride with the 20th level feature of being an Oath of Glory Paladin with Living Legend. So you can empower yourself with the legends, whether true or exaggerated, of your great deeds. As a bonus action, you can gain a bunch of benefits for 10 minutes, which you can only do once per long rest. Or you can restore your use of this feature using a 5th level spell slot. So this feature will grant you 3 different things. The first is Charismatic. So you are blessed with an otherworldly presence and have advantage on all charisma checks. Next, you get Saving Throw Reroll. So if you fail a saving throw, you can take a reaction to re-roll it, but you gotta use the new roll. Then finally, you get Unerring Strike. So once on each of your turns, when you make an attack roll with a weapon and miss, you can just make it hit instead. That brings you 20 levels overall, giving you the power of sunshine, and the only thing that's going to surpass you with this build is you tomorrow. If you want access to the character sheet for this build or any of my other builds, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the comments and description down below. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button. And I'll be here helping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to play as Escanor, the Lion Sin of Pride from 7 Deadly Sins in Dungeons & Dragons.